In the heart of West Africa, a storm is brewing. The world is watching as Ibrahim Traoré, the young soldier president of Burkina Faso, challenges centuries of colonial dominance. France, the old empire that once held Africa in its grip, now finds its influence slipping through its fingers. And in its place rises a new power, China, delivering not only promises, but next-generation weapons and technology that could rewrite Africa's destiny. This is the story of a geopolitical earthquake, the story of how one African leader, defying the odds, is standing at the crossroads of history. This is Ibrahim Traoré. China delivers next-gen weapons. France loses Africa. In September 2022, at just 34 years old, Captain Ibrahim Traoré seized power in Burkina Faso. A soldier of the people, he rose not from luxury or privilege, but from the front lines of battle, where Burkina Faso's army struggled against waves of insurgency. The people, tired of empty promises from corrupt politicians and foreign overlords, saw in Traoré something different. Courage, simplicity, and an unshakable will to fight for sovereignty. His image spread like wildfire, a young leader in fatigues, refusing luxury cars, refusing palaces, living among the people. For millions across Africa, he became more than a president. He became a symbol of a new Africa, unchained from colonialism. For over a century, France dominated West Africa. Through military bases, economic control, and a shadowy system called the Franc CFA, Paris kept African nations dependent and weak. But Traoré changed the script. He expelled French troops from Burkina Faso. He shut down French military cooperation, and he called out France's role in Africa's suffering, openly, fearlessly, at rallies and international stages. His words echoed across the continent. "We will no longer kneel. Africa will stand." Suddenly, the unthinkable became reality. Other nations, Mali, Niger, Guinea, followed suit. France, once the unquestioned master of the Sahel, was losing Africa, piece by piece. But if France was leaving, who would replace it? The answer came swiftly: China. Unlike the West, China offered Africa a different deal: roads, railways, hospitals, and weapons, without lectures about democracy or human rights. And now, the partnership was entering a new stage. Reports surfaced that China was delivering next-generation weapons to Burkina Faso and its allies. Advanced drones, anti-air defense systems, and surveillance technology, tools that could change the balance of power in the Sahel. For the first time in decades, African armies had the chance to defend their own lands without begging Paris or Washington. Imagine the battlefield of the future: Chinese-made drones patrolling the skies above the Sahel, surveillance systems mapping every movement of insurgent groups, mobile anti-drone weapons neutralizing threats in seconds. These weren't dreams. They were becoming reality. Burkina Faso, once left with outdated rifles and broken vehicles, was now testing advanced tools of war. And Traoré made it clear: these weapons weren't for conquest. They were for freedom. We will defend our land with our own hands. No foreign power will dictate our future. But every move on the chessboard has consequences. France watched in anger as its influence evaporated. The United States, too, grew uneasy, seeing China not only build infrastructure, but also arm African nations. What was once France's backyard had now become a battlefield of global powers. The Sahel, long ignored by the world, was suddenly at the center of a great geopolitical struggle. What makes Ibrahim Traoré different is not just his alliances, but his connection to the people. Unlike many African leaders, he doesn't rule from behind golden gates. He walks among farmers, soldiers, and ordinary citizens. He speaks in simple words, and he listens. This people-first image turns him into a hero, not only in Burkina Faso, but across the continent. In the markets of Bamako, the streets of Niamey, the villages of Ouagadougou, people chant his name. For them, Traoré is not just a president. He is proof that Africa can rise on its own terms. The fall of French influence in Africa is more than politics. It's a cultural evil. For decades, African nations were told they needed Paris, Washington, or Brussels to survive. But now, with Traoré and his allies rejecting foreign control, a new confidence is spreading. In Niger, Mali, Guinea, leaders are uniting in what they call the Alliance of Sahel States. An alliance built not on colonial chains, but on sovereignty and shared struggle. And behind them stands China, supplying weapons, technology, and investment, challenging the old order. But change never comes without resistance. Insurgents still roam the Sahel, fueled by hidden sponsors. Economic sanctions from the West try to choke these nations. Propaganda campaigns paint Traoré as a dictator and accuse China of neo-colonialism. The struggle is far from over, but the people of Africa have seen a glimpse of freedom, and they are unwilling to go back. History teaches us that empires rise and fall. For centuries, Africa was the playground of colonial powers. But today, the script is changing. Ibrahim Traoré is not just fighting for Burkina Faso. He is fighting for an entire continent's dignity. And as Chinese weapons arrive, as French bases close, and as African nations unite, a new dawn begins to break across the continent. The story of Traoré is not just about one man. It's about a generation refusing to be slaves of the past. It's about Africa standing tall in the 21st century. France may be losing Africa, but Africa is finding itself. And in this struggle, the world is watching. This is not just history. This is the future. To understand the present, we must revisit the past. For centuries, Africa was carved apart by European powers. France's colonies stretched from Dakar to Djibouti. They called it the French Union. But behind the words lay a system of control. Forced labor, resource plunder, and political puppetry. When independence came in the 1960s, France did not leave. Instead, it built a new system, France-Afrique. African presidents were trained in Paris. African economies were chained to the CFA franc, a currency printed in France. French troops never left. They simply changed uniforms. Generations of African leaders bowed their heads. But a new generation, born after colonialism, hardened by war, began to ask, why must Africa remain in chains? Burkina Faso has always been a land of revolution. In the 1980s, Thomas Sankara, the Che Guevara of Africa, rose with fiery speeches of self-reliance and dignity. He renamed the country from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, the land of upright people. But his dream was cut short by assassination, with French fingerprints suspected in the plot. For decades, Sankara's ghost haunted Burkina Faso. And in 2022, when Ibrahim Traore stepped forward, many whispered, Sankara has returned in spirit. His rise was not just political, it was historical destiny. While France clung to old methods, China advanced silently. In 2000, Beijing launched the form of China-Africa Cooperation, FOCA. Highways, dams, schools, and hospitals were built. By 2022, China was Africa's largest trading partner, outpacing France tenfold. But now, cooperation has entered the military domain. China's weapons are affordable, modern, and free from Western political strings. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, once armed with outdated rifles, now receive wing-long drones capable of long-range strikes, radar systems to detect insurgent movements, secure communication networks immune to Western espionage. In the Sahel's harsh deserts, these technologies are game-changers. France once boasted of Operation Hurricane, its military mission to save the Sahel. Thousands of troops, billions in funding, bases across Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso. But after years of French presence, the insurgency only worsened. Villages still burned, terrorists still roamed, and people began to ask, was France truly fighting terrorism or fueling it to justify its presence? The answer came in mass protests. Tens of thousands marched in Ouagadougou, Bamako, Niamey, burning French flags, waving Russian and Chinese banners. The message was clear. France dégage. France, get out. And one by one, the bases closed. France withdrew, humiliated. The 21st century is no longer unipolar. For decades, the West dictated global politics. But today, powers like China, Russia, India, and Turkey challenge that dominance. Africa, once ignored, has become the new chessboard of power. China invests. Russia sends Wagner fighters and military trainers. Turkey builds drones and infrastructure. Even Iran and the Gulf states seek influence. And at the heart of this new order stands Ibrahim Traoré, refusing to be anyone's puppet. He chooses partners not by colonial history, but by mutual respect. In the dusty villages of Burkina Faso, beyond the geopolitical games, live ordinary people. Farmers who once feared insurgents now see drones protecting their fields. Mothers who once lost sons to ambushes now hope for peace. Children who once studied under broken roofs now dream of
يعني شيء
Traoré's decisions are not abstract. They mean survival. They mean dignity. They mean that for once, Africa is own story. But the West does not retreat quietly. Sanctions are imposed. Banking systems are restricted. Media outlets brand Traoré a dictator. The same powers that once armed colonial armies now cry about human rights. The hypocrisy is not lost on Africans. They see through the smokescreen. France may have lost bases, but it still controls media narratives, corporations, and hidden networks of influence. The battle is far from over. Across Africa, Traoré's rise is igniting a fire. In Senegal, youth protest French dominance. In Chad, whispers of revolution grow. In Congo, people demand control over their cobalt and coltan, the minerals that power the world's smartphones and electric cars. From Cape Town to Cairo, the dream of Pan-Africanism, a united, sovereign Africa, breathes again. Once a vision of leaders like Nkrumah, Lumumba, and Sankara, it now finds a new champion in Traoré. China's role in Africa is not limited to weapons. It is also about technology. Huawei builds Africa's communication networks. Chinese satellites map African lands. AI systems help monitor borders and cities. In the coming decades, Africa may leapfrog industrial stages, jumping straight into a digital era. And the partnership with China ensures Africa is not left behind. For France, this is devastating. For Africa, it is liberation. France's decline in Africa is not just about losing military bases. It is about losing an empire. From Algeria to Madagascar, from Mali to Chad, France ruled with arrogance. Now, the grandchildren of those colonized are rising with defiance. Every French base closed is a symbol. Every African handshake with China is a declaration. The colonial era is not just ending, it is collapsing. Africa is no longer a chapter in someone else's book. It is writing its own story, page by page, leader by leader. Ibrahim Traoré is one chapter. China's partnership is another. The fall of France is a footnote in a much larger narrative, the rebirth of Africa. And as the sun rises over the Sahel, a question remains. Will this be the dawn of freedom or another false start? The world is watching. In Washington, policymakers debate how to counter China in Africa. In Moscow, strategists smile at France's humiliation. In Beijing, leaders quietly celebrate each new deal signed with African partners. But in the villages of Burkina Faso, none of this matters. For them, what matters is food, safety, dignity. And for the first time in decades, they see hope. The future stands on a knife's edge. Scenario 1. Africa embraces sovereignty. With Chinese support, it secures borders, grows its economy, and unites into a powerful bloc, free from Western control. Scenario 2. The West strikes back with covert wars, sanctions, and propaganda, trying to destabilize Africa. The continent faces years of struggle, but emerges stronger. Scenario 3. Internal divisions tear Africa apart. Leaders betray their people. Corruption spreads, and foreign powers return in new forms. Which path Africa takes depends not only on leaders like Traoré, but on the people themselves.